And just to note that our recording secretary will make note of council's attendance for our record. We'll move on to agenda item number 2. 2A is a discussion regarding flock cameras. And we have Trevor Chandler here with us this evening, who will be our first speaker on this matter. He's appearing via Zoom, and please, staff, if we can unmute his microphone.
And Madam Mayor, maybe I'll just kind of tee things up here for Mr. Chandler. So we, as you all know, and maybe for anybody else watching, we did receive a concern from a resident about the use of flock cameras, an automated license plate reader, and the council wanted to have a bit of a discussion around these. These have been in place for about 2 years through the SLMPD, and tonight, in addition to Mr. Chandler from Flock, we have Chief Balsrud with the SLMPD Police Department, our prosecutor, Elena Schwartz, and then our city attorney, Mr. Shepard, who you all know. So we'll talk a little bit tonight about the Flock side of things, some of the concerns, some of the advantages, and then it's a chance for you all to ask some questions. And you do have a lengthy email from Mr. Daly, so you understand what his issues are. But mainly, to summarize, those are kind of the sale of data, the constitutionality of cameras, and the risks for misuse. So with that, I would just turn it over to, I guess, Mr. Chandler, because he's got a tight schedule, and we can proceed.
All right, thank you so much, sir. And yes, everyone, I'm Trevor Chandler. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for Flock, and just really grateful for the opportunity to answer questions. And that's what I want to do most with the time here, is answer any questions in particular. This is I know, a very sensitive conversation whenever you're dealing with public safety, and I want to make sure all the concerns are addressed. But as was stated, just to touch on a couple things of the high-level aspects of the Flock system, I think it's very, very important. First is Flock does not sell data. A lot of people have a misconception of Flock being like a social media company where, we collect all these images and sell them, aggregate them, send them out for other purposes. That is 100% not the case. Your community, Shorewood, owns 100% of the images that it collects, and the city of Shorewood is the only one that can decide who they want to share it with. Flock will never make a decision to share your data without your consent. Basically how it works is when you have an account set up, from the very beginning, all sharing is default off, and only Shorewood can decide if you want to have a one-to-one sharing agreement with another city, expand it to state sharing, or even go further if you want. But Flock doesn't make that decision, and we store the data. However, we do not own the data. You are contractually the owner of all the data and legally for those purposes. So that's really important. And I know concerns have been raised about legality, and this is a very important aspect because just like any other public safety technology that's used as evidence in courts, defense attorneys regularly challenge whether it is constitutional, whether it is legal. The thing that differentiates Flock in that regard from other, evidence public safety platforms is the almost unanimous finding that it is fully legal under the Fourth Amendment. This is at federal, state, and local courts, most recently in Virginia, just the other week. There is one court case ongoing in Norfolk, Virginia. We are paying very close attention to it, but it is one out of thousands that has been considered. And of those many, many court cases that have been considered, it's been an almost unanimous verdict that license plate readers are fully constitutional under the Fourth Amendment and fully constitutional under state laws across the country that they operate in. There's been some concerns that Flock is using dark web data. That's simply not the case. I know there was an article regarding an internal discussion that never actually, the dark web data or the utilizing of hacked data was a conversation that happened and it never got followed up on. This is just an internal conversation that was pre-reported. So that's simply not the case. Flock has never used never use dark web data for our products. And license plate, that was in reference to another product that you all are not considering. So even if it were true, it wouldn't apply to the license plate reader program that you all are talking about. And lastly, before I get into questions, there's obviously been some concerns about different stories about how individual police departments have utilized Flock across the country. And that's why we take our customization so seriously, that we understand Flock is used in almost 6,000 communities across the country. Many of those communities have differing values as to how they approach law enforcement and what they want their law enforcement to do. And the reason is that that's one of the reasons we've made our tool so customizable, so community safety doesn't have to come at the expense of community values. So, for example, we've introduced filters that will prevent any searches from going through your images if the search has anything to do with abortion or immigration, because we want to make sure people feel comfortable with that, even with the people that they're sharing with or with their own users. Second, we also have. I'd always challenge anyone to find a more transparent public safety tool than the Flock system, and no one has been able to answer me with a more transparent system. We have permanent audit logs that permanently track every usage of the system that that can be reported on publicly, depending on how much you want to audit. And it also provides not only the case number that was used, the individual that did it, but we're rolling out an AI proactive auditing tool. So you don't have to wait until your audit is run to see if someone potentially made a mistake or potentially misused it. This will flag for your system administrator if there's suspicious activity, such as a lot of searches going on after hours, if there's a case number that's assigned to it that doesn't apply to the reason that's being provided. We're continually innovating and spearheading new transparency and accountability features to continue to make this the most transparent and accountable public safety tool that's out there. And so I want to make sure that this time is for your questions and any outstanding issues that you might have, and I would be happy to answer any and all questions you might have.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Chandler. Council, are there any questions relating to this presentation?
I have a few. So what exact data fields are collected and stored? And can non-essential vehicle attributes be disabled, like looking at stickers or, any of those other, color of the vehicle, age, make, model, et cetera? Like, is it just only the license plate?
Great question. So it is the license plate and the vehicle characteristics. So there's no personally identifiable information that is collected, which is another misconception. People make an assumption that Flock has a giant database of PII, and that's not the case. So what the images that are taken are traditionally the cameras are positioned to get the rear of the vehicle to get the best image of the license plate, and that's the best way to be an investigatory tool. That being said, less than 50% of hit and runs are solved. And one of the reasons being, if you get hit by a car, you're usually not paying attention to the license plate. So if you get hit by, a red truck, and the police stop by and you don't have a license plate, they can look at the cameras in that region around that specific time and look for a red truck to provide a objective and actionable piece of evidence that they can then follow up on. And so it's the best way to identify a vehicle is obviously a license plate, but as we all know, people steal license plates, they remove them, and so that's where the vehicle fingerprint technology is helpful, specifically in cases like hit and runs, and that's actually one of the reasons that why Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the national group, has fully endorsed Flock, because not only does Mothers Against Drunk Driving heavily focus on obviously impaired driving, which Flock cameras have made a real impact with, but also on hit and runs.
I actually think that the definition of personally identifiable information would be a license plate. It is registered to a person, and you could find that. So I don't think that's entirely correct. What outside Shorewood, any who outside Shorewood can query or receive our data? And are any private entities on the same network?
Thank you for that question. So the only people that can access Shorewood's data are the people that the agency chooses to share with. So you can choose to share with nobody, and that's absolutely an option. We find a lot of agencies find better success when they do share with, a lot of times with their directly surrounding agencies or within their state, but that is 100% the choice of the community. And that goes the same with any private companies that use Flock in your area. It's very important to note that a private company that is using Flock can choose to share their cameras with law enforcement. So if there's a wanted or suspected vehicle that crosses one of their cameras, the law enforcement will get an alert. But those private companies will never get any access to law enforcement data. We abide by the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Standards, CJIS standards, mandating how we handle law enforcement information. And we do not share any law enforcement criminal justice information with private entities.
So the make of the car is a law enforcement piece of information? Because I understand that the plate and, some of the other information that you're collecting is law enforcement for law enforcement purposes. But it seems that some of the other information that is also collected may not necessarily be for law enforcement use.
Yeah, so if it's collected by law enforcement for law enforcement purposes, that goes under the CJIS standards and will in no way be shared outside of those standards.
What is the documented accuracy rate for Minnesota plates under varying conditions like snow or rain?
Great question. Our accuracy rates that the most recently that I saw was over 92%.
In Minnesota or overall?
Overall, I can look to see if we have specific types for Minnesota, but that is overall.
So is visual confirmation required before initiating a stop on a hit protocol?
We encourage all law enforcement agencies to have visual confirmation before initiating a stop. That is a policy that goes to your law enforcement agency, Flock. It's very important to note, and this is another misconception, is that a lot of people think that if there's a hit on a Flock camera of a wanted vehicle or a suspicious vehicle, that this camera is judge, jury, and executioner. That is not the case. This is an actionable piece of objective evidence that your law enforcement can use as an investigatory tool to pursue crimes and whatnot. And we encourage every law enforcement agency to make sure that they have visual confirmation of the plate before making a administrative action.
You mentioned that you do audits. Do you also do pen testing? To prevent...
So we don't do the audit. It's the cities that do the audit. So we provide the tools to do the audits.
What about penetration testing for cyber hacks, breaks?
Yep. So we have SOC 2 Type 2 and SOC 2 Type 3 auditing to make sure continually investigating that we have the highest levels of encryption and reliability and accountability from hacks. And we have not had a breach or a hack.
But what is your breach notification procedure?
Under national state laws as well as in our contract, we are obligated to let you know if there is ever a hack or a breach.
Within 24 hours, a month, a year?
I can check what the specific state legislation is in Minnesota, but I know that we have a mandate to report to you very quickly if anything like that happens.
And what is the indemnification if there is a breach? Is that a city liability or is that Flock liability?
With indemnification, if there is a breach, that would be a Flock liability because we store the data.
And will you, as Flock, accept termination for convenience or policy violations without penalty?
I will have to look at the specific contract. I don't believe we have a termination for convenience, but we do have termination clauses in the contract if there is a policy change or if something goes against community policy that is agreed to.
I think those are all my questions.
Council, are there any other questions for Mr. Chandler respecting his hard stop at 6 PM?
I've got one. My name is Dustin, a council member here. Mr.
Hello, sir.
Chandler, so if you have the data and it's a, software as a service, what do you, I assume that outside of the city law enforcement agencies can come to our police department and request data or subpoena it. But what happens when national law enforcement agencies or courts go straight to Flock? Are you forced to give our data to other agencies if it's under court order?
No. So what would happen in that situation, as outlined in the contract, is we are actually required to notify you. And what we have done and what has happened is we tell the subpoenaing agency we do not own the data. We direct them to you, and we direct them to your agency and legal entity, so you can decide on how you respond to that request.
Okay, so it's your company's policy to never give out data without informing the cities, or you just never give out data in general and leave that to the cities?
Both. And so we will never share your data without your consent. And in the contract.
Mr. Chandler, it appears we're having some technical difficulties at the moment, and your screen is freezing, so just bear with us here. Mr. Chandler, can you still hear the audio?
Yes, I can.
Okay, it looks like it's fixed. What was the last thing?
I got it. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Just following up on Councilmember Matty's question, in order to share it, is there it doesn't come back to this group here. It's basically within the jurisdiction of the law enforcement agency to decide whether to share or not?
Correct.
Correct. Are there any Minnesota statutes? Are you familiar with Minnesota statutes and how they relate to the sharing of information? Is there anything in statute that's related to the sharing of information?
I do not have the best familiarity specifically. What I do have is the fact that we provide your community with the capacity to limit sharing to whatever level you want. So again, if you don't want to share with any other agency, if you only want to share with those within 40 miles, 50 miles, or only with specific other local agencies, so you can have hyper-regional, hyper-local regional collaboration. We operate in 48 of the 50 states, specifically because we have a very customizable system based on state and local regulations as it comes to data sharing.
Okay, when you say provide the community, you mean law enforcement?
Yes, yeah, the law enforcement agency that serves the community. Yeah.
Okay, and you talked about some filters that prevent searches that can be turned off. Is that also within the law enforcement purview?
Yep, absolutely. And of course, as a city council, you have absolute discretion to mandate whatever policies you would like your agencies to follow. So if you wanted to make sure they were opted into that, that could be something that's passed in policy, or we're right now it's upon request, but we're actually including a toggle button so the agency itself can just turn on these filters to make sure that their community safety doesn't have to come at the expense of community values.
You know, can you describe those filters?
Yes, absolutely. So I will say they're not as simple as just basic words. We don't make public the full list of blocked phrases and words, because obviously we want to discourage folks from trying to find ways around them. But they include misspellings, they include variations, and if there is any search based on these, it will prevent the search from even going through. It will return no results.
Okay, but we'd have to write it into some policy. We wouldn't necessarily know otherwise if a filter was being turned off or if information was being shared, unless we wrote it into or requested it be written into the law enforcement policy.
Yes, you could absolutely do that. Some communities have a good enough relationship where they simply request it. Law enforcement says yes, and then we turn it on. If you want to put it in policy, from Flock's perspective, we want to serve the values of the community, and we're happy to make any customization that will further that.
When you train their AI, do you use our data? And if you do you anonymize it? How do you do that?
Great question. Thank you for that question. Yes. So, this is very important because it enunciates this in the contract. We are constantly working to improve accuracy, and that's one of the things that sets Flock apart from many other vendors is our very, very high rate of accuracy. And about 1% of all images are utilized nationwide, not just within the city of Shorewood, to help train that. So, for instance, if you have a Pontiac Tempest and a Buick Skylark that are getting confused with one another, and if anyone knows my cousin Vinny, they'll get that reference. Hopefully, I'm not the only one. But if there's a Buick Skylark and a Pontiac Tempest getting confused with one another, our engineers will look for specific examples of where that confusion has taken place, or if there's a new model of a Ford Focus, they'll look for the new models where potential errors have taken place and utilize that for the machine learning. It is fully anonymized. It is separated without any location data, without any data about what agency it's even from, any timestamp, any metadata is fully removed from it, and it is put into the machine learning to help improve accuracy.
I don't think you can totally anonymize if the license plate says Minnesota, though, can you? I mean, that's locational data without metadata.
Well, it has no idea. There's no location of where in Minnesota that picture was taken. It doesn't know what agencies' cameras were utilized for that, and so it is really completely disconnected from any identifying metadata that could even render it slightly useful.
So then my other question, if you are using AI to train, are you enriching the data with any other third-party data?
No.
Those are my questions.
Council, are there any other questions? Thank you for your presentation and your time this evening. I hope we got you off to your next meeting in time.
No, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to answer questions. We at Flock really pride ourselves in showing up to as many city council meetings as humanly and digitally as possible. I actually spent over a year in Minnesota working on the marriage equality campaigns for the Minnesotans United for All Families. So Minnesota has a very close place in my heart, which is why I was excited to be invited here. And again, just grateful for the time. And if there's any follow-up questions you might have, please, your police department has my contact information. I'd be more than happy to schedule individual one-on-one follow-up calls or answer any additional questions that might come up over the course of the evening.
Thank you for providing us with that opportunity if we do have follow-up questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Council, we do have our police chief and our city prosecutor here as well. Chief and prosecutor, did you wish to address the council, or are you here to take questions? It's my understanding you're going to give a little presentation.
I wasn't planning on a presentation,
Okay.
but I'm here for questions.
And Alina?
This was, the program.
You know what, if you're going to chat, let's do it on the microphone so that it's on our record.
I can do that.
Then if you could just state your name and the agency you represent for our record, please.
Justin Balsrud, Chief of Police, South Lake Minnetonka Police. And the history with Flock, with our agency, was we received a grant through the Department of Commerce on stolen vehicle prevention. So we're just shy of 2 years with the implementation of the grant. The grant is running out, so in 2026, all 4 cities decided to continue the use of the 4 cameras that we utilize in our jurisdiction. So that's the presentation. Otherwise, I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, are there any questions for the chief relating to the usage of flock cameras?
I have a few questions. Sorry, Chief. So, do you have data on the number of stolen vehicles recovered in Shorewood using this flock camera system?
I have rough data. We had some outage today with our internet, so I believe I found 2 recovered stolens in the last 2 years.
And how many amber or silver alerts have we assisted using flock?
I found 1 attempt to locate, but I couldn't look up what exactly it was. But we have 143 related contacts with flock hits. Most of them are driving status offenses, driving after revocation, driving after suspension, driving after cancellation, and driving after cancellation IPS, which is inimical to public safety.
So, do you have any data or information on the clearance rate change with the flocks versus the baseline without them?
No. If I had that ahead of time, I probably could have ran that, but we don't have a lot of stolen vehicles, fortunately.
Do you have any idea of what the false positive rate is for Shorewood?
No, not a fan.
Or the number of incorrect stops?
The incorrect stops that I was able to tell were, there were flock hits. The flock hits were good, but the registered owner was not the driver at the time.
Makes sense. How many audits have been completed in the last 2 years that we've been using this?
We have not completed our biennial audit. We're due early in 2026, so we've selected a vendor, and that will take place early in 2026.
And do you know the number of policy violations, if any, for the flock policy? Has anybody violated the policy, or is?
We've had no known flock policy violations.
And do we have a demographic breakdown of these flock stops?
No. I can get you that information.
Okay, well, so it is available.
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, would it be possible to put some sort of public dashboard updates and issue an annual report to the residents so that they feel more comfortable about the flock cameras, how they're being used, how they're working, benefits to the community?
Yeah, we can certainly discuss setting something up like that. We don't currently have much of a public report. It's something that we can certainly look into establishing.
Do you have some sort of a sense of, what kind of searches are being done for Shorewood, through Shorewood, with the data on the flocks?
Searches by our officers or?
Well, I mean, anybody that you've given access to our data and information, I don't know who, I'm sure it could be like the Bureau or, I don't know. So whoever you've given them, what kind of searches are being done?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a way in our portal to check that, but I can certainly check in on that and get back to you.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we should be able to know. Maybe currently we don't, or maybe it's available and we just don't know it, but I think that's probably something we should know about what people are searching in Shorewood.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the audit that they do.
Those are my questions.
Council, are there any other questions for the chief?
Got one. Has our investigative staff been able to utilize the camera data to track property crimes or something similar?
Yes, I mean, there's one case I can't talk too much about because it's currently at the county attorney's office, but it's a significant case where the use of the flock helped establish a timeline that's leading to some significant charging.
Have we shared our data by request to anyone?
Yes, we've shared our data with several agencies. That was kind of the intent on this grant, was to kind of have a network of agencies. So I know currently Minnetrista, Orono, Wayzata, Minnetonka, us, Plymouth, and Hopkins for sure.
Okay, so we all, maybe a little background would be helpful for us new first timers or partial first timers. We're sharing this information. We went together on a grant. Their neighboring cities are all using it.
Yeah, the grant was put out through the Department of Commerce. We were part of that grant. Other agencies have been previously contracted with Flock, so I don't know which ones of those agencies are part of the grant and which ones were just doing it for their public safety department.
Okay, and we share the data with all those cities?
I believe we are. I don't have a full list of who we share with.
And no other one-offs,
With,
random cities outside of that?
yeah, there definitely could be. I don't have the full list. I can certainly have our Flock administrator give me that full list, and it can be provided to you.
Does that mean they have access anytime they want, or they have to request? And do we keep track of who's requesting what? That was goes to my other question. And are there federal agencies also that we're sharing this with, like
I don't-
DHS and ICE and?
I don't know about federal agencies. I believe it's mostly other municipalities in the metro area. So what they recommend is a data sharing agreement between agencies. We'll share your data if you share ours, kind of back and forth. It was just done through a request via Flock from that other agency requesting access to the data. Now what they recommend in the last few months is a written agreement between agencies. So that is what we are now doing.
Is it a push or a pull of information? When we give access, do they just get access to everything, or do they have to pull it down? Like, what is the audit process for us to see who's accessing what data about Shorewood?
Well, the data would be, if we grant access to it and say they were searching for a specific vehicle, then that would pull up on their search.
Okay, so it's a pull. So they have to actually do a search. We don't just push information. We just give them access. We open the pipe, we open the door. They don't need a key anymore. They don't need to ask to come in. They can come in and take whatever they want, or look at whatever they want.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Do they get a unique login?
It would be just through their Flock portal. It would just allow the data that we have to be accessible or searchable. So when they do a search, if we had the vehicle that they were looking for in our camera system, then it would pop up on their screen that the vehicle drove by the Flock camera at Smithtown and County Road 19 on this date.
I guess from our vantage point, it feels like we're catching you a little off guard with some of the questions. How do we know that the data is being used per statute?
Just like any of the criminal justice information that we access, it's all logged and audited, and
Like, we've been doing this for 2 years and it hasn't been audited yet. Like, within the past 2 years, how do we know that it's following statute?
it'd be, well, we go through our policy and have our policy in line with state statute, and then state statute says every 2 years you go through an audit. So when we establish the policy, we want to make sure that we're in line with the rest of the criminal justice information. And it's just like whether or not they're running license plates or querying drivers in their vehicle. The assumption is that they're doing it properly because that's what they're trained to do. And if they're not following policy and they're not following the criminal justice information policy, then they'd be subject to discipline, civil, and potentially criminal liability.
how do we know we're following policy?
Unless there is an indication that there's a breach, the audit would be the number one way of catching it.
The upcoming audit?
Yep.
What about insider threats, though? Like cyber hygiene, somebody shares a password, somebody, that happens a lot. I mean, pretty much every day I'm reading about that.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, we have to go through annual CJIS training to make sure we don't do those kind of things. And if something's flagged that the information was pulled inappropriately, so we have our audits to the BCA as well. If there's a potential violation, then we would do an investigation and go forward from there.
Council, are there any other questions for the chief?
Just one kind of clarifying question. What actually data do we use to generate a hit? I mean, I know we had one actually right outside this building that was a hit. I don't know if it was a stolen car, or are they downloading stolen statuses from the state BCA, or is it just the cities that are participating that are uploading what's stolen from their communities?
You can put in something and manually enter it into like a hot file if there's a reason for it. But certain vehicles and license statuses that are tied to register owners would be, I think, automatically uploaded from the state systems.
Okay, so they do have some interconnectivity with the state?
Yes.
Kind of list of stolen things?
Yeah. So if we enter a vehicle into the stolen files, then
And every flock in the state potentially would be looking for that?
it would,
Stolen.
yeah, I mean, if a camera hits it, it would alert that there was a hit on that stolen vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Chief Ballsrud, if council would have additional questions similar to Mr. Chandler, who presented on behalf of the Flock Company or Flock product, can the council members reach out to you individually?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think you've answered our questions this evening. I don't feel you were caught off guard. Thank you for your time and for coming to our meeting tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Would our city attorney, or pardon me, our city prosecuting attorney like to address the council?
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here. I did not intend to make any presentations, and the purpose of me being here is to answer any questions that you may have. After listening to some presentation, I wanted to add one point. There was a discussion of Virginia case that Mr. Daly was previously citing in support of his concerns about the flock system. And since then, on October 14th, there was another Virginia case that was decided by the Court of Appeals that, in essence, overturned the Norfolk case cited by Mr. Daly. Essentially, the court decided that the movement of the vehicle had been voluntarily conveyed to anyone who wanted to look. And that particular decision made significant or highlighted the significant distinctions between the cell phone tracking, the tracking of the data collected from the cell phone versus flock information that is essentially available to anybody who is there to see, such as license plate number and the vehicle type. But I'm here pretty much to answer any questions you may have as they relate to the criminal prosecution that rises out of flock. So far, we had not had any challenges, constitutional challenges, to South Lake Minnetonka PD using this system. I would also second the previous presenter here who indicated that the flock system is widely used specifically in cases like hit and run, when there is a report of an accident or an incident that happened, and the only thing that the person that observed the incident can provide is the license plate number. That is when the law enforcement can utilize the flock system to actually try to identify the vehicle that was potentially involved in the hit and run. And as the previous presenter indicated, this is one of those types of crimes that a lot of times goes unsolved. And this flock system helps in trying to identify the vehicles that were involved in any particular incident like that. But if you have any questions for me, hopefully I will be able to answer.
Has Flock helped you successfully prosecute many cases in this area?
I cannot specifically say that it helped me prosecute, because what the prosecutor deals with is pretty much the evidence that is ready for us to use. Whether it was collected via Flock or via identified informer or the officer's observations, it really doesn't make difference for the purposes of prosecution. It does make significant difference for law enforcement because that's what potentially helps them track the violators. But once the case comes to the prosecutor, we just deal with evidence. And what the prosecutor looks at when we decide whether to charge the case or not is whether we have sufficient evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt or not. Now, that being said, the prosecutors also, we are attorneys in general, so anytime we look at the case, we look at the case critically. So if we see that there are some constitutional concerns or challenges that the state believes that we cannot overcome, we would not charge that case. And if there are any concerns about improper use of any technology that the prosecutor would notice while making the determination whether to charge the case or not, we would definitely bring it up to the law enforcement's attention. For example, to your question about the audits, so the audit, it sounds like, will be done shortly because this use of Flock system is coming up on 2 years. But in the meantime, if the case comes to us, and by us I mean prosecutors, and we look at the case and we sense that something was not collected properly, we would definitely bring it up to the chief's attention or deputy chief's attention and discuss potential issues.
So then if there was no Flock, it wouldn't really have much impact on you prosecuting cases if there were no cameras or no Flock system?
Not specifically on the prosecutors per se, but I would suspect that there would be a number of cases that would not be resolved, meaning would never come to the prosecutor, for the sole reason that the police were not able to track the violator.
Thank you.
You mentioned constitutionality. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but could you elaborate a little bit on what the argument is? Is it Fourth Amendment arguments?
Yes. So it seems uniformal now that that Virginia case was overturned, that the courts came to the conclusion that the Flock system does not implement the Fourth Amendment, and the reason why is because it is not a true seizure. And the distinction that the courts seem to make is that the license plate is there for everybody to see. So in other words, everyone who is around that particular vehicle is free to see that license plate, is free to see that particular vehicle. It's a simple explanation of why it's not a seizure. Versus a cell phone where the data is collected, and the courts like to describe it in cases of tracking someone using the cell phone data, it's essentially gaining a window into their private life. And that's how the courts make distinction between tracking someone using the cell phone data, where you can literally track a person's movement, and not just movement, but anything about the person's life based on that cell phone data, versus the information that you receive using Flock. Essentially, you just get the photo of the vehicle, you get the photo of the license plate, and you get the date and the time. So it's a very limited information, and it's limited not just in view, but in time.
So it's only that one picture? Like, it's not a network, like this Flock camera, then that Flock camera, then that Flock camera, and that Flock camera? They can't track, Flock can't do that?
I think that they can, and I would defer to the chief, but yes. So if there are multiple flock cameras installed in the area and the police are trying to solve, let's say, a murder, granted the city prosecutors don't deal with cases like this, I'm sure that multiple flock cameras data will be utilized to try to track down that potential suspect.
Thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you.
Council, this was before us this evening after a lengthy email that we received from a resident, and we requested that we hear the presentations that were made this evening by the company, by the chief, and by our city attorney. So this is not on the agenda to vote this evening. It's just a work session. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. Council, before we move to the next topic, is there anything else you'd like to bring up relating to this issue?
So I think we should discuss this a little bit about what our policy is going to be for data collection and data retention in the city, and the transparency, like, do we want to include in the policy, in the South Lake Minnetonka Police Department policy, some guardrails, some transparency, requirements, like an annual report about how many, stops, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and there are a lot of risks that I think that we should talk about to the city, but also, to residents as well with this. So I don't know if this is the time you want to talk about that, but I definitely think there's a lot to be unpacked with this. That was not the only email that I received about this, and then when it popped up on Friday, I got 3 or 4 more over the weekend. And there was another resident who wanted to be here today but wasn't able to. So I don't know if we're going to talk about this again or if we want to pick it apart now.
Council, I highly encourage when you receive emails from residents that you forward them to the city administrator so that the administrator can forward them to the council without breaking open meeting violation. It's imperative that all council members are in the loop as far as any information that we're receiving from residents. We do have another issue on the agenda this evening that must be discussed tonight. So I'm hearing that council would like to discuss this again at a future date. Mr. Novinsky, is that possible that we can put that on a future calendar?
We certainly can add that to a future calendar if council wants further discussion. It sounds like you want to talk kind of specifically about data collection, data retention, and what the impacts could be for not only the city of Shorewood, but kind of all the member cities, I would presume, who are part of SLMPD. So.
Chief Balzerud, if I may ask you one question? So the city of Shorewood shares the SLMPD with 4 cities, well, with 3 other cities, 4 total.
Correct.
Have any of the other member cities voiced similar concerns?
Not to me.
Okay. We do have a board meeting with the 4 mayors and the chief coming up in less than 1 month. And I would like to share a summary of this discussion with the board at that meeting. And then encourage the other councils, if they have similar issues within their councils, that they report back to the chief and to the board.
Yeah, I can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think that's a good idea, and we can provide a summary of kind of what went down at this meeting to the other mayors. And I think, Mr. Novinsky, it would probably be beneficial if we put this on an agenda after that meeting with the mayors.
Yes.
So then we're probably looking, since we don't have the second meeting in December, we're looking at the earliest of January.
When is the contract due to be renewed?
The contract will be renewed February, I believe.
Or how long? So it'll be renewed again in February?
Yes. So it'll be a 1 year contract.
I do have one other question. Do you know whether or not people are able to do, regular residents and citizens are able to do a FOIA request on this information? Because I believe they probably are.
What aspect? Because
Any of it.
certain data, part of the data is private, so.
I'm going to let my city attorney weigh in on this matter.
Yeah, this was a nice segue to a comment that I was just going to make for the council as you think about this issue and into the next meeting. There is a Minnesota statute, I think one of the council members mentioned it, 13.824, something worth looking at. A lot of the questions that were raised about issues of data privacy and public sharing of information are accounted for in that statute, and then the policy that a law enforcement agency has to be consistent with that statute. So the data is private, so you can't access it in a FOIA request. There have been other states where it wasn't classified as private within their public record statute or their ALPR authorizing statute. So recently there was one in Washington State where the court ordered it to be public. But our legislature has specifically contemplated that it's private data. It's also specifically contemplated that the law enforcement agency must be destroyed within 60 days or less. So I think our current SLMPD policy is 60 days. That's consistent with state law, but it can be less than that as well. So some of those issues that have been raised this evening are addressed in there, especially in terms of audits and the public nature of the audit, things like that. So just as a reference point for going forward.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So we will place this back on another work session sometime in the new year after the SLMPD Coordinating Committee meets and discusses this, and we have an opportunity to put it on another calendar.
Are we being asked to approve of the next contract for Flock? Is that what's coming up?
No, the contract is through SLMPD.
Okay.
So it's not a contract with the city, it's through the South Lake Minnetonka Police Department.
What are we doing here then?
What are we doing here tonight then? Well, the question was put out to council, and council wished to discuss it, to, I think, learn more about some of the details that were discussed tonight. But
Do we have an action out of this then? Is it?
you don't, unless, I guess, there's a broader,
It doesn't have to be a formal action, but it sounds like maybe there's some discussion here, but I'd like to take,
yeah.
I think some of this discussion is not a lot of controls that we're a part of.
Right, I mean, a lot of the, the board, the SLMPD board has a lot of control over what happens with the department. That's how the joint powers agreement is set up. The city councils need to provide direction to their representative so that the city is represented, its views and positions are represented on the board. I mean, that's the general structure. So I think part of the conversation that we had at the retreat was, trying to strengthen that and create more direction for board reps, for both police and fire. And hopefully, tonight is kind of one way that can be done. So council is more informed and understands more of the details and then can provide direction.
So we essentially approved the funding of this system in the last budget.
It would have been included in the SLMPD 2026 budget.
And the renewal will be before the audit is done?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's where I'm going with this, is if we approve, it was pre-approved and then an audit's supposed to be done biannually, it's lagging, and it came to us, we had concerns, and I would have liked to have the audit in hand with this, during this discussion too. I mean, typically we do this before it ever kicks off, but now we're doing it 2 years in and we don't have a lot of data. That's why I was talking about being caught off guard. We don't have anything really, is this a good idea based on how it's been used?
I think those are all questions we'll have to flush out as time goes on. I don't think that's going to all be answered this evening. I do think we'll have another robust discussion whenever this hits our next agenda. I do understand concerns regarding timing, but as far as what we were trying to accomplish this evening, I think we've accomplished it, which is inviting these people to help educate our council. And they came, they provided some education, and now they're all willing to provide answers if we have follow-up questions. So, and we've all also agreed that they're going to come back, and we're going to discuss this again. So since there's no action on tonight's agenda, I think we need to move on to our next agenda item, knowing that we're going to have another robust discussion as a continuation of tonight. Okay, so we have agenda item 2B, engineering staff.